Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Terrence Fox, Head of Innovation with iAdvise. It's a pleasure to have you here for today's Conversation With session. Nice to speak to you too. It's been a week, or actually 2 weeks since our last session. Excuse me, we had a week off. I hope you're all decked out for Halloween as I am. And again, thank you for joining today's session, which is titled What Retailers Are Doing to Not Just Enhance the Experience, but to Win at the Holidays for 2020. I'm absolutely thrilled we've stolen time from Lucille DeHart, someone I've admired in the CX space, and an innovative thought leader, all-around CX expert, who will share her opinion and expertise on today's and obviously moving forwards scenario for today's always-on consumer. But a small anecdote I wanted to bring to the floor before diving into today's session. For those of you who don't know, which I'll assume is 99% of you, I grew up on a farm. We had goats, pigs, cows, chickens, and like the 5 sons in our house, these animals ate an awful lot, right? My father used to get feed from the same, I think it was actually called Warwick Feed and Grain was the name of the store. I think it's out of business now. But as a kid, I remember each time I went with him in his truck to get more feed for the animals, he'd pull up, the clerk would recognize him, and put 3 to 4 bags of sweet grain in the back for the horses and the other animals. My dad would throw him a 20 and pull away. So reflecting on it, this is obviously great service, right? He doesn't even have to get out of his car. The guy already knows what he wants, puts it in the trunk for him, gives him some cash and pulls away. And here we are today. Now, I'll reveal my age a little bit for you. 2.5, 3 decades later, and BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store, and buy online, pick up at curb are stronger than ever, naturally due to the scenario and the circumstances with the pandemic. And how strong? Adobe reported that in April 2020, BOPIS boomed 208% compared to April 2019. An incisive study found that 80% of customers, this was done in September, 80% of customers expect to increase BOPIS use, and around 90% of shoppers prefer home delivery over a store visit in the next 6 months. So if they are coming to your store, it's all about safety, speed, and convenience. So actually getting to our star for the day, to get some true expertise on the subject, we're thrilled to have Lucille DeHart, as I mentioned, thought leader in the CX space, but former director of marketing, strategy, CRM, and business development at Bed Bath & Beyond. And I first met Lucille, at I think it was a Total Retail Tech Conference. I was very impressed with the way her expertise and her personality, I'll say, seemed to blanket the entire room. She's able to crack some jokes here and there and made for a very lively session. So I'm thrilled to have her back. Without further ado, Lucille, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Oh,
Okay.
there I am.
Yes. Nice to talk to you again.
Thank you for that wonderful build-up. So now I have to be intelligent
Yes.
and funny and somehow top your farm BOPAC story.
That's correct.
Okay.
Those 3 items are your big hot
That's
topics
it.
for today.
Okay.
Lucille, to get into it, I like to spend some time getting into our guests' brains, which is a good saying, I guess, for Halloween week also. Tell me a little bit about what you've been reading, what you've been fascinated with, what you've been learning, or even harder question to reveal what you've been up to, Lucille. How have you been challenging yourself through the pandemic?
Well, I actually did put makeup on today and a nice top for you, but there are sneakers and sweatpants under this desk.
I'm wearing Lululemon shorts myself.
So that's so you're welcome. I knew the reading question was going to come up, so I'm almost like this mad genius with books where I just keep acquiring books and read like pieces of them. But so this is on my nightstand.
Okay.
There's one fiction book which I cannot get through. It's sort of like a British character. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. I just can't get through this one, but I keep reading it. I do read a lot of business books, which I know is more about what you're asking. So Wisdom at Work was kind of very interesting. I picked this one up earlier in the summer and did go through most of it. It's really about blending the younger talent with what's called the elder's wisdom in a very high tech world and a connected universe. The older talent within organizations seems to be left behind. And this book is really saying how they really should play more of a mentor role and become more of a clan elder. So that's kind of interesting. And then I was out to business lunch with somebody, socially distanced outside. And they had recommended and sent me these two books. One is Quiet, because believe it or not, Terrence, I am an introvert. No one believes me, but I test as an introvert. So the book is called Quiet. So I haven't dove into that, but that's next on the docket. And he also said, I have a very curious mind. So he had sent me the book, A Curious Mind, which I'm really interested on. I'm really diving into. And I think that really does speak a lot to most marketers, where they have an infatuation with consumer behavior and what motivates people. And I'd have to say probably most people in our industry are very curious. And then lastly, from one of your podcasts, the Forever Transaction. So this one came up through a referral from one of your guests, really about sort of the subscription model and keeping customers within the loop of your brand and services, which I think is very timely, just given where we are within the retail climate. So that's my stack of to-dos.
Yeah. Your nightstand looks very much like mine. My wife picks on me a lot that I get excited about a book almost just to have it, and then I have it and I have a hard time finishing it. So
I do get through them, but I take on way too many at once.
Yeah, we have a book club internally at iAdvise, and I seem to be perpetually 2 books behind. So now, Lucille, tell me a little bit, because of course, with your background at Bed Bath & Beyond and others, I'm fascinated with a consumer experience you have had lately that was either particularly memorable, for either a good or a bad reason. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I have good and bad, as everyone does. And it's not going to be nearly as glamorous, but the one pet peeve that I always have is around the audio loop when you're dialing into organizations. And I was recently on a call trying to reach someone in the business insurance side of Liberty Mutual, because I was looking into creating an LLC for a business that I'm exploring. And I could not get to a business person. I could not get into a division that can handle me. In fact, I got into 2 menus, and then ultimately it directed me to the website. And then ultimately, are you ready for this? Because I know you're sitting down, I can't see you.
Yeah, I'm right.
It disconnected me. It legitimately, you've reached a whole new low in society when the automated service is hanging up on you.
Right.
So it just hung up on me. And
not worth the effort.
Not miss enough. I called back just so I could get hung up again. So that had to be the worst experience ever. And then I keep.
What kind of intelligence does the AI need to have in that automated environment to say, this isn't worth my time, I'm going to hang up on
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry I'm bothering you. I don't,
Yeah.
Where is Rosie the robot when you need her? I say.
Yes.
And then I would say the local entities always do customer service right. When I say always, for the most part, just like your farm story. See, I have a like farm story. I was just recently in our town butcher, and I wanted to get a stuffed pork chop, and they only had one left. Now, in any other retail, if that was one shirt or one object or one widget, unless you engage with them, they probably would not proactively fulfill that, right? You just walk away thinking it's out of stock. But he saw me looking at it, and he said, "Oh, how many of those did you actually want?" And he made it for me, like on the spot. Now, it's simple, but to me, I was just like, I was fully prepared to not take it. So not only did he fulfill the order, but he doubled it in a sense. I'd say the same thing with, my smoothie shop. They know you by name. They know when you haven't come for a while. And it's really those human moments, both from the phone experience to the in-person experience. We keep coming back to personalization and how people are really longing for human contact. But I feel through the entire COVID, if nothing's come out of this, it's really the exaggeration of us really craving societal contact. And customer experience really has to catch up, because customers not only want it, they're craving it, and we need to figure out a way to use technology in a more productive way, so customers don't feel like, in my experience, I went through the automated system and got kicked out. They need to feel like somehow you're using that as a catalyst to help me, not you. because I know it's cheaper for Liberty Mutual to use the automated system.
Right.
And it's not good for me. And until we use technology for the benefit of the customer, we're always going to have these friction moments with customer experience, either on a local scale or on a grander scale with, major brands.
Right. And just so you know that I wasn't doodling or doing something that I shouldn't be doing, I can't press too hard on the desk because it shakes the whole video. So I write a little bit sloppy, but I wrote down not able to get to a human at that time. You needed that. And that's a critical thing, right? If you're trying to have that sort of, like you mentioned, a human-to-human contact, or if you need that, excuse me, I may have put words in your mouth, and you're just pushed into an automated scenario, it's frustrating. You want to get out of it. You need your problem resolved, and it's not a good experience.
So you just keep hitting, 0, and as technology would have it, they outsmart you, and now they've programmed around that.
Right.
So you can't really even bypass the system anymore. Again, the bigger picture is, if you're going to use technology to facilitate a customer experience, you have to have the lens of it being beneficial to the customer,
right.
Not the lens of what saves money and time and resources on behalf of the company. Because customers will catch up. Like we know that. I was in a chatbot loop not long ago as well. And I almost thought I was in this reality TV show, like the Misery Index or something, where as bored, I was just typing in this gibberish of, is this a joke? Why can't you help me?
Yeah.
I'm getting like, I don't understand your question. I don't understand your question.
Right. I have a client of mine that I'm in the early stages of working with, and I showed them how a typical visitor might engage with their site. And if you have a ubiquitous chat experience in the bottom right-hand corner, great, but you better have a plan to make sure you're accommodating every sort of customer that hits your page. So I told him, all right, here's a scenario. I'm buying new running shoes. I've never run a marathon before. I want to ask which running shoes you might recommend. And I type in men's running shoes into this chat, and it just redirected to an FAQ about how to buy a new shoe, or like just giving me a list of 7 items about returns and things that weren't necessarily relevant to what I was looking for. So there is a lot of it today, but like you said, brands are kind of put in a pinch because they're trying to scale while being cost efficient and feel that an automated scenario is better than nothing. But sometimes it can actually turn people off and drive them away.
It isn't better than nothing. I really think, companies need to evaluate as they're cutting staff in brick and mortar, and they are putting more resources into web build outs and technology and platform enhancements. They really have to understand that, the customer should come first. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but many companies have lost that prioritization. They're all about, how do we cut costs? How do we become more efficient? How do we fulfill things more operationally and logistically to our benefit? Versus how does the customer want to engage with us? What is going to, stop putting the burden of me to find the information. Like when you give me a link or dump me into an FAQ because you don't have the automated response to my specific question, that doesn't help me. In fact, it frustrates me, and it causes me to abandon that site experience and do my own research and or turn to another brand that does that. And I think one of the things that customers are expecting this holiday is to get some type of immediate gratification through solving problems,
right,
and at least finding out where their gifts are, what the experience is like, recommendations. And I think that's going to take a lot more human engagement than the industry is prepared for, just because of the sheer volume moving to online experiences more than anything else.
Right. And so let's get to a big part of today's topic. Tell me a little bit about, of course, buy online, pick up in store, buy online, pick up at curb. It's pretty easy to understand. But tell me a little bit about how you've seen it evolve in the marketplace and what you're seeing today.
Gosh, it feels like it came out of nowhere in March, right? Where all of a sudden, other than groceries, everyone was just driving by stores and people throwing things into cars.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You have good aim, right?
Yeah.
But it existed for many, many years. I don't know if you recall, if the Elder book did not date me more so than your story, this one will. There was a retailer called Bombay Company. And a lot of those early furniture stores always offered curbside pickup. You would actually, though, go in the store, place the order, and rather than them give you this giant box of a table or a cadenza, they would tell you to pull around the back of the store and they would load it in there for you. In stores like Crate and Barrel, Restoration Hardware, they've been using an element of, BOPAC, the buy online. In this case, it's buy in store, pick up at curbside. With the pandemic, we started to see the necessity of retailers really having to change their business model. As stores were really closed because of social distancing, there became this mandate of how do we make the most of the situation, and mostly around necessity supplies for customers, but also just to maintain the business.
Right.
That they decided, let's shift from, not just buy online to pick up in store, which was an emerging but a small piece of the overall e-com business. It was probably between BOPIS and BOPAC, less than 5% of e-com sales derived from that. Now we're seeing it upwards of, 18, 20% of e-com sales. And quite frankly, for holiday, I wouldn't be surprised if it was significantly more than that.
Yeah.
Which I know we'll talk about some of the challenges with the emergence of, increased usage of the service. So what they started to do was, instead of creating these in-store moments for pickup, we'll bring out the goods to the curb. And now you're starting to see customers just literally pull up outside the store and have the goods loaded into their car. Part of that challenge has always been, does the store know you actually have the inventory that the website has?
Right.
So that's a very early challenge where they would say, this is available in these 3 stores, which may or may not have been where the customer wanted to go.
Right.
And then also, they were not fully equipping a lot of the employees to manage this service at scale. Right? They would just designate runners throughout the store to pull these, pull and pick these orders, and then, wait for the customer to call them and say that they were there, and then make that transaction. So the whole BOPIS, BOPAC, while elements of these have been around, the necessity for the retail industry, particularly in Q4, to figure this out at a whole new customer experience level, is very, very critical. And honestly, a huge opportunity for building loyalty and engagement with customers when we come out of the pandemic. How are they going to engage and stay loyal to the customer? And there's a whole slew of pros and cons with, with the new, I'll say BOPAC, because the curbside is a bit prominent. For BOPAC, one of the key priorities here is that it has social distancing built right into it, right? So you don't have to worry about all the regulations and, cleanliness and store practices and operational considerations. You also have sort of the emergence of micro-fulfillment with BOPAC, where you're starting to use the stores as legitimate fulfillment centers, which we've heard about in the industry for quite a while, but it's never really come into fruition. Australia happens to be a little bit ahead of the game. So they have Accent Group, which owns like Athlete's Foot and a whole portfolio of other brands. They've implemented dark stores, which are not open to customers any longer. And they reconfigure the merchandising not for consumer interface, but for efficiency and pick and pull. So goods that might not normally be merchandised together would be in this scenario, just because it's a lot more timely and efficient, and they're shaving 10 minutes off of a fulfillment by doing this. So there's another benefit to leveraging BOPAC, where you can really enhance your real estate rather than closing some of these critical stores. Another key advantage of BOPAC is the fact that you have a lot more operational efficiency, in the sense that you can have extended hours. You can operate these 24/7. The fact that you don't need as many employees to operate these, so they're much more cost efficient. And the cost of fulfillment and impact to the margins is very different. So for a traditional, BOPAC order in the grocery industry, for instance, to fulfill a grocery order is around $7, where you're really just having the labor pull things and have it ready for the customer to come and get it. If you were to ship that or have home delivery, it could be as high as $21. So not only is this kind of methodology beneficial for the customer at this stage, but it's also operationally very efficient. And like at the beginning of the conversation, we were saying, is this good for the customer or is it good for the company? In the case of well-performed BOPAC, it's good for both of them. But some of the downsides of this, which I know we kind of wanted to talk about, sort of go forward on holiday, some of the major downsides is that there's no customer experience with BOPAC. I jokingly said you drive through and they throw the stuff in your trunk or your window. One of the major considerations here is that fraud is 2 to 3 times higher with BOPAC orders, because the whole validation process and systems for validation at the register is very different. So that's a consideration that retailers need to take into effect. Parking lot congestion is going to be unbelievably a challenge, because now you're not just having one retailer like Bombay or Crate and Barrel Restoration Hardware have one customer. You're going to have lines of cars that may or may not be in fire zones.
Yes.
So that's going to be a huge consideration, particularly in outlet centers and strip centers where you have multiple big box players in the same, parking vicinity. There's not going to be any impulse to buy, or there's very limited impulse and queue lines in BOPAC. And retailers are really using BOPIS and a lot of the queue lines to get that 1 or 2 more items and grow the basket and increase the average order value.
Right.
And that's not something we're seeing right now in BOPAC. And then honestly, where's the Christmas experience in this? I've been on a lot of webinars and industry events, and I'm not really hearing a lot of retailers talking about how do we enhance the customer experience as they go through this BOPAC? Not just the logistics of the traffic and how we managing the transaction and fraud minimization, but are there going to be garland arches and parking lot music piping out? Are your employees going to be dressed as elves? Are you going to have last minute gifts set up at a table, or BOPAC only offers where it's available only on pickup at curb? So there's a lot of consideration that needs to go in a very short period of time. The good news is a lot of retailers have figured this out almost instantly from March forward. I mean, you have brands like Dick's Sporting Goods that just launched BOPAC in March, and they're seeing upwards of 30% increases on their their internet sales as a result of being able to fulfill those orders.
Right. And I think it was, I'm either giving one brand the attention it doesn't deserve in this scenario, or another one.
This is up here, Terrence.
Yes. Yeah. We talked before the session that Lucille is kicking the keg. But it was one of the two, Costco or Sam's Club. I think it's Sam's Clubs that did you drive up to the store, you fill out on a tablet, or you talk to someone who's holding a tablet, and they place the order with you in person. So you have that sort of exchange, granted safely, maybe through a window, and then you're able to get those products put into your trunk of your car. So, that felt like kind of a concierge service that not many are necessarily doing the exact same thing, but it was a way to stand out. And I thought sounded pretty impactful for one of them.
It's not scalable, though. It's not scalable because you're going to have checkouts, in excess of 15, 20 minutes, depending on the engagement of that shopping experience. So,
and I was reading this morning that Walmart has been rated very highly for having addressed the problem that you mentioned, many labeled parking spots for these sorts of pickups and these sorts of exchanges. And they've thought that through, which you might expect someone like Walmart to probably have done.
Any of the grocery stores, Walmart, Target, that has the grocery aspect, Whole Foods, they figured this out well ahead of time. And I'd like to say it was out of necessity, but my guess is it was probably more around that $21 and $7 cost fulfillment. Where they saw this as an extremely operationally efficient and cost-effective way to service the customer. And because they had that in place, because they already had the parking lot stalls and a lot of the logistics figured out, doing this for regular commodity goods was a no-brainer. It was easily scaled. But then the majority of retailers are figuring this out, as we speak. They're still trying to see how do we manage this new way of retail outside of retail. So it's going to be very interesting on how they leverage that experience outside the store. And I can tell you one thing that I am hearing a lot about is the geofencing and geo-targeting around the store as a means to enhance that customer engagement. So you encourage the customer to download your app so they don't have the burden of calling you when they're in the queue line outside. The app will recognize that they're near the store and that order could be fulfilled much more quickly as they anticipate that you're pulling in and you're ready to receive your order. And then the other component of that, which again, I'm not hearing too much about, but I have to believe they're working on it, is that post-purchase engagement. we're used to getting a thank you for your order. You left things in your cart basket. Hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. Those automated transactional emails from a user experience on a website. I've done a lot of BOPAC orders, and I don't get any of those. Hey, how was your curbside experience? Did you forget anything? We'll deliver it to you. Like Ace Hardware does that with paint. If you come and pick up paint, but you didn't order enough, you have to come back to the store. They'll come and deliver the extra gallon. That kind of post-purchase engagement, particularly with BOPAC, is going to be critical, not just from a customer service standpoint, but also to make up the revenue you're not getting from impulse and, quite frankly, Black Friday and the day after Christmas, when you have hordes of people coming in the store. So figuring that out now and before the season starts could make all the difference with a really strong Q4 and an early Q1 ramp up.
So it's funny, you've talked about impulse buys a few times. The way I imagine it, and this is just my opinion, is being on my couch with my mobile phone. That's the fastest way of having some impulse buys and adding things to my carts that maybe in a store I'd look at and pick it up, put it down, put it away. But you're seeing it as a detriment possibly to these retailers who don't have people in the store to get the pack of Skittles, or as a bad example, on the way to the cashier or something like that would drive a little bit more business.
Yeah, I mean, the emergence of the Q lines really increased the average units per transaction and average order value, simply because they became like this monstrous grid of just, I wouldn't say crap,
stuff. Yeah.
Dick's has an enormous line, and everything from, sports bubble gum to basketballs.
Right.
Bed Bath & Beyond has it, obviously. Pretty much every retailer has implemented some type of, either at the register or at the Q line impulse item.
It seems almost like an internal challenge to see who can have the longest line with stuff. Well, right? It's turned into a maze at this point.
Well, it worked, right? And you're not going to have that now. And I would argue a little bit that the mobile and or web experience of buying is not the same as impulse. The may we recommend, or would you want batteries for that? That's just sort of standard customer service. But it's really about, do you want the stress ball, which you probably weren't going to shop for or even look at online.
Right.
At the register, you might be like, oh, yeah, I need this. And they're going to miss that. But I do think one thing that they could start to consider is the geofencing, where you can prompt, hey, in the next hour, we're offering these 5 items only for our BOPAC customers. And they can engage right there and then and give the runner time to get that and add it to their order. Now, yes, there's going to be some checkout issues with going back into the transaction and working out that logistic, but I think those considerations need to be had. Right. Because you're going to lose a lot of that. You're going to lose a lot of the candy at checkouts and the little as seen on TV gadgets and stuff like that.
So tell me, Lucille, how do you see customer expectations evolving into 2021, and who do you feel is doing a good job at this point? I know you've kind of talked about Ace Hardware and the little things that they are doing, but anything else to share on that?
I'll share 2 anecdotes. One I think was just interesting because it wasn't curbside shopping; it was storefront shopping, similar to what you were saying. But I actually did venture into a mall. I was going through withdrawal, so I had to have the experience of a mall. It was basically me.
Yeah.
It was my lifelong dream of being trapped in an empty mall by myself.
Yes.
And I went to the Lush store, and because it's such a tactile product, they weren't even letting people in the store. Forget social distancing or masks or gloves. You couldn't even go in the store, but they were open. And they set up just this tabletop concierge storefront selling where I would say, I'm interested in a mask and I'm looking for a gift for my nephew and I wanted some soap. And she came back with a palette of all different options. And I literally did a transaction without ever going into the store, but I felt like I was shopping and I was engaging with her. So I think there's something to be said about storefront shopping as opposed to curbside shopping.
Right.
And then Lululemon just, every time I turn the corner, I'm like, never could things be so much more expensive than, a lot of other like products. And yet you feel the need that you want that. You want to be part of the community. You want part of that store environment. So I think they're getting it right through the sense of community, not through the sense of aggressive marketing. And not even so much from customer service. I can't say that their talent is any better or worse than a lot of other best-in-class stores I've seen. But I do think that they've built this very, very tight sense of community. And I don't think a lot of other retailers have figured out, other than their loyalty clubs, which I don't see as a fundamental go-forward format for success. I do see the need, as I started saying earlier, for belonging and connection and human interaction, that the concept of community, the concept of human contact, of hearing a loud voice at the end of the phone, I think that's going to be what separates retailers and brands go forward. The expectations of the customer are immediate fulfillment, solve my problems. I think this holiday season it's going to be a lot around when is my stuff coming, just because of the onslaught of the bottleneck of shipping and everything that we're hearing with postal delays and surcharges around all the carrier services. But I do think that we're going to have to answer all of these questions relatively quickly. And those chatbots and automated systems and hanging up on me again, okay. I think we're going to find that people are going to long more for the sense of, I'm in this with you, and I hear where you are, and here's the information we have, and just really staying engaged and building that sense of community. You know, one of the most powerful sentences I heard in most of my webinars, and it's one of the most simple, was just ask the customer for forgiveness. No, at some point, but if you apologize and you ask for their partnership and just say, we're so sorry, we're figuring this out, what can we do to make this better for you? You'd be surprised how just asking, engaging, and building that community, how far that goes in some of the imperfections that we're going to have to live through.
Right, being honest and upfront. Right, absolutely. And like you said, this is new for everyone. So I think setting that expectation is important. One last thing I'll share with you, because it was a personal experience and I thought you'd find it kind of funny. I love going to LL Bean. Right now I'm in North Andover, Massachusetts. LL Bean in Freeport is about, hour and 15, 20 minutes away. But my wife is from Maine, so we shoot up to Maine a lot. And we stopped in an LL Bean because, they've got, obviously they're known for the tremendous customer experience, and their stores are kind of neat. It was our first real experience going in a store in a while. And my wife was looking at a couch. So we wanted to actually go see the couch that they were selling at LL Bean. But we got there and it said, labeled in 3 or 4 spots, do not sit on the couch at all. So I'm in a tough scenario where, are we going to buy this somewhat expensive couch without being able to sit on it? Luckily, we were able to get the permission of a sales associate eventually to run it by the manager that we can test it out before using it. But I thought that was a pretty interesting predicament to be in when you've got these high value items that people want to sit in and feel and touch, and you can't do it.
Yeah, Boll & Branch is a brand that I follow very aggressively because I think they just do so many things right. They're the first retailer to use this new sanitization light. So I think technology is now going to solve a lot of those showrooming problems. So their light system, they have 3 new flagship stores, and in their new stores, they have lights that literally will disinfect the entire store environment, which will kind of solve the problem. And so go to a Boll & Branch store, they'll let you touch the towel. You won't put Lysol down before you walk in.
I had never seen anything like it. It was like, so how do I, and I actually asked the gentleman, how do I make a confident purchase without being able to use it? And he, like you had mentioned, he had to say, I'm sorry, I don't know quite what to recommend. Let me go talk to someone else. But Lucille, I don't want to keep you for much longer. Fritz, do we have any questions after our segment for today? He usually puts up a little one-liner. Okay, there it is. So at this moment, Lucille, so thank you so much for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have you. And I've really, as I mentioned, I admired your work, and I'm super excited to see where you decide to go next. And thank you again for joining and sharing your expertise on the buy online, pick up in store and BOPAC, as well as what brands are doing moving forward. Thank you, Lucille.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So our next session next Tuesday is with Nate Brown, the Chief Experience Officer at Officium Labs. You probably know Nate. Look him up. He's a CX leader, innovator. He's all over the internet, all over LinkedIn, big red beard. But Nate is going to join us to talk about lighting the experience fire. and lighting the customer experience. So if you've enjoyed any part of our program today, we'd love, of course, a share, like, subscribe, and be sure to ask questions into our live feed. You have a chance to ask questions directly to Lucille or the iAdvise team. But thank you again for joining us today. It was a pleasure.